Hi everyone, my name is Shazia Khan, and today's unit that we'll be doing is Unit 24, which is Understanding and Leading Change. And the learning outcome we'll be doing today, out of the 4 learning outcomes, is Learning Outcome 2. So before I go into Learning Outcome 2, I just want to give you an overview of what we did in Learning Outcome 1, so you've got a little bit of an understanding of what we've done in Learning Outcome 1. So just a refresher. So just hi Keith, you okay? So in Learning Outcome 1, we looked at producing comparative analysis of different types of drivers of change in business. So we looked at the change in business and why it's so important, and the different types of changes that occur within an organization or the business. We looked at the different types of organizational change in a business, including things like large scale change, radical discontinuous change, small scale change like incremental or evolutionary. We looked at different types of change that include planned or emergent, initiated or imposed change, types of organizational structure, organizational change as well. We looked at strategic change, structural change, cultural change, technological change, process change, and people change. We also looked at the element of in Learning Outcome 1, so I'm just recapping on that. Keith, are you on now?
Yeah, I'm on.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Keith. I'm just recapping on the last session, which was Learning Outcome 1, and what we looked at in that. So we looked at change in business. So we looked at things like large scale change, radical change, revolutionary change, and then we looked at things like small scale change, such as incremental change and evolutionary change. We then went on to look at different types of change that include planned or emergent, initiated or imposed change, and looked at each one separately with elements of advantages and disadvantages. We then went on to look at types of internal organizational change, such as structural, strategic, people, and process change, and why that's important for any sort of organization when it comes to any sort of implementing any sort of modifications or any changes within that organization. We looked at individual, group, and organizational level changes and how they occur within a business or an organization. We then went on to look at drivers of change, technological, economic, social, and demographic, political and legal changes, environmental changes, competitive changes, and organizational changes. We then went on to look at the internal and external drivers of change. So what drives this kind of change? We looked at PESTLE. We looked at things like, elements of, changes in technology, changes in the law, and we looked at elements of the impact of technology, including things like mobile devices, artificial intelligence, which is kind of taking over the world at the moment. And we looked at elements of digital transformation of organizations and the change in business models. So we looked at revenue streams, improved customer satisfaction, operational efficiencies, and data-driven insights. So these were the elements of Learning Outcome 1 that we looked at. Now we're going to go on to doing the second learning outcome, which is Learning Outcome 2, which looks at elements of evaluating the impact of change on organizational behavior. So what involves change within an organization. So the unit aim is change is the only constant in life, whereas industrial, whatever position you're employed in, there'll always be changes. As such, businesses need to adapt and change with changing business environment. Organizations are seeing change of a more high speed than before. technology is playing a big part, as we mentioned, in learning outcome one. In business, changes all around the organisation, from minor processes to large-scale processes. The aim of this unit is for students to understand the different types and scope of change that may occur in an organisation. And the unit will aim to illustrate the drivers, triggers for change and response to change. Students will gain an appreciation of how the depth of change can influence organisational behaviour both during and after the change. On successful completion of the unit, students will be able to apply a range of change management concepts, including diagnosing, driving, resting forces, planning for change, and dealing with change in organisational settings. So the indicative content for learning outcome 2, which we're doing today, is we look at change and the impact of organisational behaviour. So the impact of change at individual, group, and organisational levels, because they have a different impact separately. And the psychological impact of change and people and the implications of change. When we look at the psychological change, Keith, what could it be? How could it impact on people psychologically? If change was to occur within an organisation, how do you think that could impact on people psychologically?
Psychologically,
What do you think? Do you think people would get like worried and scared and like they become apprehensive because they think that there's something going to change in the organization? Does it make them anxious?
yes, it does.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just, and it could be any organization. For example, if there's change within my organization, I become really anxious. And I will be honest with you because, I feel like, oh God, how's this going to impact on, me? And what are the implications of it? So, it does make you anxious and it makes you worried that you're not able to adapt to that change as well.
Yes.
Impact on team dynamics and how people are led and managed. So look at the influence of position and perception of in different views of change, negativity or positivity. We look at the readiness to change, so learning organizations and the use of systems theory, systems leadership and continuous improvement models, and measures to minimize impact change. Different perspectives dealing with change impact analysis. So we look at some models and techniques by different academics, and we look at the importance of stakeholders analysis. When it comes to change, how do you adapt to it, Keith? Do you think you adapt well to change?
It depends on the type of change.
Okay. So if it's a change within the organization in fact for management and things, would that affect you?
Yes, I think it will.
Yeah. And do you adapt quickly to like technological changes, new changes of technology?
I think it will take time to adapt to new
Yeah.
technology because you have to learn how to
Yeah.
use them.
Yeah, it's true. You have to learn as you go along. So, there's no way around it. If there's new systems being
Yeah.
put in place, you have to adapt to that. I do know, when I used to work at a university once, there was, the older generation, um, and
Mhm.
we got laptops for the first time. And because I've been teaching 19 years now, 18 years, we got laptops and they couldn't adapt to the laptops. They liked, writing things down. And they want, be able to
Yeah.
mark online and things like that. So
Uh,
yeah, because they were old school, you see, because probably I was used to it when I went to university, to write everything down, and we never had laptops and mobile phones at that time. So now the change was impacting on them people because they were a bit of an older generation, university lecturers and things.
yes.
Yeah, so it does have an impact. I believe it does have an impact on individuals. So what is change? So, we have change in place in regards to the different types of change that we have in place. And the reason is it's something that's different or is to be modified. And modification is always a good thing in some places no, but in other places good. Change management is a system and approach that is dealing with the transition or transformation of an organization. So it could be things like their models are not working or the technology is needed, new technology. Organizational change refers to a company taking a major component of the organization and making sure that they are trying to change that organization to meet the learning outcomes and, meet their strategic plans as well. So there's again a video there on change, and it looks like the level of change within an organization, people's behaviors, culture, and the element of, how change impacts on individuals. So change modules theory. So we have the first change models theory, which is the change model theory of Levin. And he was a German-American psychologist, and he's also the founder of social psychology. And he actually looked at the element of group dynamics with reference to behavior and psychological process found with social groups or between them. And his model in the 1940s, which was regarded as a cornerstone for understanding any sort of organizational change, and many organizations rely on this. And he saw a three-stage process, which is in that diagram, which likened to melting a block of ice and refreezing it in a different shape. So the three-stage process was unfreezing it, change, and refreeze. So the unfreeze part is, this is probably the most critical stage of the change management process, and the aim is to prepare the organization for the change that's about to take place. So that's the unfreeze bit. The change bit is when it's time to implement the change, the organization enters the second phase of that transition, which is the change phase. And then the refreeze stage, third phase of Levin's change management model, is the process where the change has fully been embedded and the team are now working in the new way. And the key here in the third stage is that it's a return to stability. And this is a necessary step because while it's accepted that change is inevitable and new changes are likely to happen, they need to be positive affirmations that change was worthwhile doing. So his model is used quite a lot within businesses. Also, the main change in business models, several changes within business models that organizations can adopt in order to transform their operations and create new revenue streams. And here are some that are in the diagram. So business, there are just a few of many change business models that can adopt to transform the operation and create new revenue streams. So business process re-engineering, lean management, agile management, blue ocean strategy and platform business model, and subscription business model. So these are some that, depend on the goals of the organization. So then we had the element of Kotter's 8-stage change model. And this is a popular change management model. It empowers different organizations to accelerate organization through change through proper planning, mobilizing employees, removing friction, and instituting a change in a company's culture. And this process enables companies to overcome challenges faced by constant change from implementing new technology and changes to organizational structure. So it could be things like new product lines, acquisitions, mergers. And his 8-step change model was implemented in his book called Leading Change in 1996. And he looked at the 8-step model, which was to create, to form, to build, to initiate, to remove, to generate, to sustain, and to incorporate. And that's the elements that are there that he used in regards to his 8-step model. And it was a model, again, that was used to by many organizations to guide them through what they need to do and how they need to sustain organizational strategies, and also how they need to implement change. Then we had the ADHE's ADKR model. And the ATHE model is one of the most proven change models among enterprise organizations. Founded by Prosky founder Jeff Haidt in 1996, it focuses on guiding individuals through the change journey by helping them realize the need for change. So it's helping them realize there was a need for change and equipping them with the skills and knowledge they need to adapt to it and motivating them to embrace it. So the whole point of this was to make sure that change has occurred, but it prepares the individual for it. So, you know, it makes them aware that this is going to happen. So the acronym ADKAR actually means, firstly, in the diagram as well, awareness, which focuses on making individuals understand why the change is necessary, so why there's a need for change. The desire, which is the D, after building awareness, fostering a personal desire to support and participate in the change is essential. Then the K is knowledge, which refers to providing the information and training necessary for individuals to know how to change. So this includes things like, you know, teaching employees the new processes, new tools, making sure they're prepared for that. And then the ability is, while knowledge equips individuals with know-how, ability ensures that they can apply it in real life situations. So this focuses on building the skills and barriers to change to prevent any sort of unsuccessful execution. So developing the skills here. And then the final one, reinforcement, and this is to sustain the change. Reinforcement is necessary. So here the stage ensures employees follow new procedures and behaviours so that the change can come into place. And it also involves the reinforcement in rewarding employees, and also, you know, making sure that they are continuous monitoring and giving them recognition and rewards. The next one we've got is the Bridges one, which is the Bridges transition model. The Bridges transition model is the framework that guides organizations through the process of transition. This framework was introduced by William Bridges, a prominent organization consultant, in 1991. This approach to managing transition focuses on human response to change as a multifaceted process through which organizational leaders can support their team members. In this sense, transition is not simply the existence of change, it's the process that an entity undergoes as change occurs. So it's here where, you know, Bridges' model identified, you know, elements of where there was support needed for the team members. And there were three elements, as you can see in that diagram, that were identified in Bridges' model, which was 3 stages. The first one being the ending stage, which, according to Bridges' transition model, the first stage of the process is the recognition of an ending. No matter what its ending, a way of doing things, a business leader, team members commonly feel resistant or even grief-stricken when confronted with change. Like we talked, you know, that is the start of it. You know, some people feel anxious, they feel, you know, they're resistant on it. Then you have the neutral zone, which is once members of the organization come to terms with the impending change, there's neutral stage. And the new beginning, which is the last stage of the transition, which involves building a foundation for the way forward. So the future here is that where the new beginnings will start, and there's more relief, and there's trying to prepare for the future. Then we got the McKinsey 7S model, and this is based on a company's organizational design and coordination. It aims to depict how to manage organizational change by strategizing around the interactions of the 7 elements. As you can see, the 7 elements: structure, strategy, system, shared values, skills, style, and staff. So these are the elements that they will be looked at in regards to that. And this is used by many organizations again, and it is the whole point of this is to try to coordinate and identify any issues around it. So, you know, try to look at the elements of the organization and try to look at the strategies, systems, shared values, skills, and involves aligning these 7 elements to achieve a common goal and a common objective. Change and the impact of on organizational behavior. So organizational change is a complex process. So it happens all the time and it requires employees and the overall success of a company. One key aspect often determines the outcome of change initiatives is individual behavior. You know, how people behave. Why do you think it's so important how people behave? To change why do you think that would impact on an organization, how people behave when it comes to change?
Because it brings up a good image to the customers.
Yes. Would it impact on the work as well?
I think it will, yeah.
Yes, it does impact, you know, like on the work they do. It could be that they're resistant to change. Employees may, it's all to do with the fear of the unknown, you know, that they don't know what's happening with their job security, you know, and also another impact is communication. If there's no communication between the managers and the individual, then they're not going to know and they're going to be more anxious, you know, so they're going to think, you know, that nothing's been communicated to us, and, you know, poor communication will lead to confusion and anxiety. Collaboration, so change initiates often require employers to work together in different ways, and this can lead to increased collaboration. Learning and development, changes can provide opportunities for employees to learn new things. You know, sometimes change is good in an organization because you can learn new things. And culture as well, the culture of the organization can change. Your values, your beliefs and behavior are accepted within the organization. Another one is leadership. So effective leadership is crucial during this time. Leaders need to be able to support their employees, motivate their employees, and communicate with their employees to make sure that, you know, there's effective communication, there's effective collaboration when change does occur. Some managers are not like that. Some managers are really good like that. So the impact of change at individual levels. So overall change can be disruptive, as we mentioned, and challenging, but it's also positive outcome when it comes to elements of, you know, growing the organization and shifting the organization into, you know, better performance. And it's also about anticipating organizational change and the impact of change on individuals and organizations. All this needs to be taken into account when, you know, looking at the impact of change. You know, because it could have a significant impact on individuals. It could be their loss of job security, learning new skills. It could be for groups. It could be, you know, working in group, teamwork, decreased productivity. For organizations, it could be their culture, improve organizational performance, new processes, new technologies, and it could be communication, you know, breakdown within the organization. So, you know, the impact of change doesn't always have a good impact on an organization. And when we looked at it, the psychological change as well, this is really important. We mentioned that, you know, change, as we said, is inevitable and it's part of our life. But, you know, some psychological changes that impact on change are things like, you know, uncertainty and anxiety. You know, people become uncertain about their, you know, what's going to happen. You know, it could be their personal change. It could be, you know, their increased certainty, maybe, you know, their emotional uncertainty. They could be resistant to change, you know, they don't like that. And they could get stressed and fear and resistant. So the implications as well, organizations can help reduce that anxiety by providing a good form of communication. Communicating with people and making sure that nothing's going to change is, you know, something that needs to be done by most organizations. Loss of control as well. So change can often be perceived as loss of control. Change can involve, letting go of familiar things, and the process of loss can lead to feelings of grief and sadness, so it does have an impact on it. And then the implications, organizations can involve employees in the change process. Getting employees involved will make them feel a little bit at ease that the change is not a huge impact and it's going to help them. Some more psychological changes, fear of the unknown, and that's a big one. People don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what new changes are going to bring back for them, and they will be resistant. They'll feel anxious, stressed, overwhelmed with the changes that are going to come in place. And here, organizations need to alleviate that fear by providing training, resources, any sort of skills, helping the employer feel empowered. Resistance is another one that, people don't like, change. And, it could be that they feel, again, uncertain about what's going to happen, makes them feel stressed, and they cling on to something. Some people cling on to something old, like I mentioned, the elderly people that were lecturers that were working with us didn't want to, use laptops. They were quite resistant because they didn't like change. The implications, organizations should address resistance by involving employees in the change process and addressing their concerns. This can help employees feel heard and valued. Overall, psychological change does have a great impact on any sort of an organizational change, and, transforming, this change and bringing in new changes, it could have an impact on people's personal changes, their professional change, their psychological changes. It could be that they're uncertain about things. So you need to communicate this and make them involved. Impact of team dynamics on how people are led and managed. So it's really important to have an effective leadership, because that's the foundation of healthy team dynamics and company culture. And, its core include conflict management, resolution, adaptability, and, having a good manager in place fosters a supportive environment where team members feel appreciated. So there are some examples of impact of change on team dynamics. The first one is communication breakdown, and that is one we've used before. Change and communication breakdown with teams, individuals are unsure what the change is, and it's not being communicated to them well. And the implications, like we said, leaders can initiate communication breakdowns by being communicated to them clearly and what the changes will involve. Resistance and conflict change are, individuals can be resistant and they don't want change, and they have different opinion and approaches to the change. And implications, leaders should address this conflict by involving the team into the change and making sure that they reduce any sort of team dynamics. Travel and engagement. Changes can impact on engagement with teams as individuals feel trust and engagement, feel uncertain to change. And again, here leaders need to support the individuals and adapt them to change and make sure that they are providing any sort of training dynamics for them, any sort of elements of that. And how it could be managed is that they provide any sort of training skills, any sort of, breaking down any sort of barriers or anything. Leadership style change can require different leadership style from managers, and they need to be more flexible and adaptable. And some managers are not, but some are really, really good. And overall change can be managed and led and communicated. Effective change, needs the foundation to a healthy team dynamic and company culture, and you need to be able to communicate with your employees. The influence of position and perception on different views of change, negativity or positivity. So depending on the position held by the individual, change can be perceived as positive or negative. And, there are different impacts on organizations, how they define change. So the positive position is an individual's position within an organization can influence their view on change. and the perception refers to individuals' interpretation of situation and influence their view. So, get the individual involved, and get them, get the individual's views on everything. The culture of an organization. Do you think culture plays a big part in organizational change?
Sorry?
Culture. Do you think culture plays a big part?
Yes, I think
Yeah,
because people have different cultures.
yeah. Culture can influence how an individual thinks and how they impact on changes. Communication is another influence, how people perceive things. Communication is one of the most important things, I believe, within an organization, because you need to communicate the changes to your employees and build a more positive view of the changes. And poor communication can lead to negative perceptions. People will, say that they don't want to, if nothing's communicated to them properly, they're not going to want to implement that. Readiness to change, so learning organizations, so implementing organizational change readiness concerns an organizational preparedness to manage and thrive an unpredicted environment of change. Implement change, so a learning organization, one that is hit of culture continuous learning, which enhances the readiness to change. Encouraging innovation and experimentation. Yeah, it will help adapt change, and employers will be given the freedom to take on new things and risks and give ideas and improve that. So getting employees involved into innovation and experimentation will help support the organization. Promoting a culture of continuous learning, and that's really important because continuous learning is really important. CPD it encourages new skills as the job changes. New training and skills are needed, so to encourage any sort of mentoring programs, any sort of training programs is really good in regards to your job role. Encouraging open communication. Now, this is really important in any organization, to try and get employees to work together, to share ideas and give feedback and identify any sort of areas from improvement. And you can learn from different people. So different people have different perspectives and different ideas. So, trying to collaborate, that helps. Building strong relationships with the stakeholders, that would be things like customers, suppliers and employers, and changing and making sure they adapt to change as well. Making sure you build this strong relationship so you don't lose your stakeholders. Overall, a learning organization is better equipped to change due to the culture of continuous innovation and experimentation. And by promoting this and getting involved with stakeholders, you are promoting to improve your overall performance. The use of systems theory, leadership and continuous improvement models is to predict and proactively plan for change. So systems theory is a theoretical framework used to understand interconnectedness of various elements within an organization, such as the organization's systems. Leadership is that focuses on understanding and managing the interactions. Continuous improvement of models using the approaches to predict changes is really important within an organization, and having this continuous change helps you as an organization to improve. And the systems model of change, organizational wide change, is emphasis that change must be implemented organizations wide. The model provides a new dimension to the concept of organizational change and the role played. So, things like people need to be taken into account, the task, the strategy, technology, culture needs to be taken into account, and having this process in place would help. Continuous improvement models can be used to gain any sort of improvement and adjust to change. An example is given there as well. For example, an organization that wants to implement a new technology system can use systems theory to understand the impact that change will have on various elements within the organization, such as the processes, people and resources. Systems leadership can be used to manage the interactions and interdependencies between these elements to ensure that change is implemented smoothly Continuous improvement models can be used to continually assess and adjust the implementation of the new technology based on the feedback from stakeholders, such as employees and customers. Overall, the use of systems theory, system leadership, and continuous improvement models can help organizations plan for change or plan for the future. Measures to minimize impact change. So there are different measures to use to impact any sort of change. So overcoming any sort of, change within an organization, and it could be things like, organizational growth and development, and there are different changes. So firstly, it could be communication. Again, going back to communication, effective communication is really important. Training and support, providing training and support for employees to adapt to any sort of new changes, any processes, or any sort of new technologies, so that they're not stressed about it. And employee involvement, getting employees involved, like we said, when you get employees involved, they feel part of the process and they feel less stressed and less anxious about the changes. Change management, effective change management can help them negative impact of change. So make sure you have an effective management in place that is supporting the employees throughout the change process. Recognition and rewards. Why do you think recognition and rewards is really important when it comes to employees?
What motivates them?
Yeah, motivates them. It does. It motivates me as well. If you if you give me a reward for something I've done, I'll get motivated as well. So recognizing that reward, giving them rewards to include, reduce their stress, and recognizing and rewarding them for their contribution and any sort of changes, their impact on the change, how they've impacted and positive impacts on the change. Recognizing that and rewarding them is really good within an organization. Different perspective to dealing with change. So, how everyone deals with change is different. Some people may have, an element of, being reluctant to change. Others may be, okay with change. So the planned approach, unlike changes that occur organically or reactively, planned change involves a systematic and structured approach to address specific issues or achieve particular objectives. This type of change is typically initiated with clear understanding of change for a well thought out strategy. So this is planned. They know the process, they know what they want to do. This is planned over time, and this is where they assume the change can be managed and controlled through a process. Then we've got emergent approach, and the emergent approach is where change is dealt with in regards to change, recognizing that change is often unpredictable. So the approach emphasizes the flexibility and adaptability to change. So it's really important that, the emergent side of it is taken into place, and it can be done in unforeseen circumstances. Different perspectives, and then other perspectives dealing with change. You have the top-down analysis perspective, which refers to using comprehensive factors as for basis for decision making. So the top-down approach seeks to identify the big picture and all of the components, and these components are usually the driving force for the end goal. So top-down approach is commonly associated with the word macro or macroeconomics. Then we have the next one, which is bottom-down, bottom-up perspective. And this is the piecing together of the systems to give rise to more complex systems, thus making the original systems systems of the emergent system. Bottom-up processing is a type of information processing based on incoming data from the environment to form a kind of perception. And then you have the humanistic perspective. And this is a holistic approach in psychology and emphasizes the importance of considering the human element in change. And then you've got the cultural perspective, and it's the viewpoint here that acknowledges the influence of social and cultural processes on human emotions, shaping how individuals think, feel, and act with their socio-cultural environment. And it looks at change with looking at their beliefs, their values, and this is only successful if you take that into account. And by considering different perspectives, organizations develop a nuanced approach to change with taking into account these different elements of it. Change, Impact, and Bonner and Arnold. Change is inevitable in any part of the world, and it's continuously processed. It keeps doing it all the time, and changes in businesses, and the whole point of it, so it could, impact on productivity. Bonner and Ireland identified two classes of impact analysis: traceability and dependency. In traceability, impact analysis links between requirements, specifications, design elements, and tests are captured, and these relationships can be analysed to determine the scope of any sort of initiating change. So the element of impact analysis is the name. It's about analysing the impact of changes in a product or application. And in one of the most integral steps in the development cycle of product, as it provides useful information about the areas of system must be affected by the change of any adverse way. So you've got, like we said, direct impact, indirect impact, interactive impact, and the ripple impact. And these would look at elements of the changes in regards to how they impact on the organization. Change impact analysis, and this is a video that you can have a look at in your own time, and it actually looks at the impact of change on an organization in regards to change impact analysis, and looks at Bonner elements of their model as well. Bonner and Arnold's. So impact analysis impact analysis techniques. So you've got the processes mapping, and this technique involves mapping the existing processes and identifying any sort of areas for change that are needed, and implementing these change, why there's a need to implement these change. And then risk assessment. Now, risk assessment is really important in any organization. By analysing any sort of potential risks and challenges, you can put strategies in place to prevent any sort of risks and, put potential barriers in place. Stakeholders analysis, and this technique is really important because it looks at elements of what the stakeholders understand about change and what their concerns are. And then gap analysis is another one. Looking at the technique involves comparing the current state of the organization to future state, and how this will be identified through trying to look at the different gaps and implementing recovery strategies to implement and avoid these gaps from coming into place. And, large or small scales of changes, you need to make sure that you consider the impact on the business processes and how it will impact on the business itself. So these need to be taken into place. The importance of stakeholders, analysis and communication in change. Why do you think stakeholders are so important within an organization? Heath, why do you think stakeholders are so important within an organization?
Sorry?
Stakeholders, why do you think they're so important within an organization?
To bring funds.
Sorry?
To bring money into the business.
Yeah, to bring the money. Effective stakeholder engagement and communication are critical for any sort of successful change management. By actively involving stakeholders in the change process, organizations can build this element of trust, enhanced collaboration, and increased commitment to the initiative. So, you need to have a relationship with your stakeholders, don't you? You need to be communicating any sort of change to your stakeholders. It's really important that you help, identify any change and get them involved. Why do you think it's so important to get them involved?
In order to bring new ideas and to make
Yeah, and
to make
it actually,
this
yes, and it
make good
helps.
decisions.
Yes, and it also helps boost the success rate of any sort of change initiatives, but also, reduces any sort of resistance and creates this ownership of the change. Stakeholders need to be involved in it, and they need to have good communication with their stakeholders, and it helps build this support with the stakeholders. It enhances the overall success of the change initiative. So getting them involved, and communicating and being transparent with your stakeholders is really important, rather than ignoring them and not getting them involved. Application of the Burke-Litwin model to make the change processes efficient and effective. So the Burke-Litwin change model is a useful model is used to guide for identifying linking factors that are critical to any sort of successful change initiative. And they are, according to the model, there are 12 critical factors in regards to it. And it's a model that's used by organizations, and it works well with some organizations in regards to how they implement, any sort of elements of the organizational change, and whether it's efficient or not. And to make sure the model is efficient, it looks at things like three main components are like drivers of the change, transformational factors, and transactional factors. And organizations use this to implement change within their organization, to make sure that there are external environmental factors. They look at leadership, mission, and strategy, organizational culture, management practices. They look at structure, work, unit climate systems, policies, and motivation. They look at the tasks, requirements, and individual needs. So, this model really plays a big impact in elements of it. And it was developed in 1992 and is used to understand an organization's component parts and how they relate to each other. And a common reason for change initiative failing is all areas of organization affected by change are not accounted for. Therefore, this models by Burke-Litwin can reveal what areas of businesses are affected and how they are interrelated. So things like motivation, things like, individuals' needs and values. And the model actually demonstrates in that diagram the hierarchy of factors within an organization, hence how they flow of influence from one factor to the next. And the model is an example of open systems theory, which suggests any sort of change coming from external factors as well. So they looked at elements of the analyze an internal environment. When we look at elements of analyzing internal environment, we look at the environment as a whole, whether there's any sort of impact on that. Identifying areas of misalignment, making sure that everything is aligned and between the internal and the external environment through their vision, strategic policies, any sort of elements of that. Developing a change strategy, making sure you address the alignment and what the goal is, include their goals, objectives, and action plans, and implementing the change, including communication with stakeholders, as we mentioned, to ensure that change is understood throughout the organization. So making sure that, you have a relationship with your employees, with the stakeholders, to make sure you implement the changes and you are taking into account what the changes are, monitoring and evaluating any sort of change. Make sure you monitor them and adjust them if need be in regards to making sure the changes are there aligned with the organizational goals. The Burke-Litwin model provides a structured approach to change management that helps to ensure the change process is sufficient. It's important to remember that this model does not make any changes to critical factors. However, it is a useful tool for identifying factors that interact with one another with change processes occurring. So by identifying these factors that influence goals, change managers can develop this change strategy and make sure that, you know, there's no problems with that, and addressing all the root causes of all the issues and making sure that performance is improved and outcome is improved as well. So we've finished learning outcome 2 now. Have you got any questions, Keith, before I summarize what we've done today? Keith, have you got any questions? So just a summary of what we've done today in learning outcome 2, we've looked at change and the impact of organizational behavior, the impact of change on individual, group, and organizational levels. We've looked at the psychological impact of change on people and implications of change. We've also looked at the impact of team dynamics and how people are led and managed. We've looked at the influence of position and perception on different views of change, negativity or positivity. We looked at the different models. We looked at the learning organizations and the use of theory, systems leadership, and continuous improvement models. We looked at measures to minimize impact change. So we looked at the different perspectives to dealing with change. We looked at change impact analysis, Bonner, Nidal, and impact analysis. We looked at the importance of stakeholder analysis and communication, and also the Burke-Litwin model to look at efficiency and effectiveness. So we finished learning outcome 2 now. The next learning outcome is learning outcome 3. Have you got any questions before we finish? These are the references we've used for today's session. And further reading is on Moodle, any ebooks. And if you have any questions, please email learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk. Do you have any questions, Keith, before we finish?
No questions.
Thank you. Thank you for attending today's session, Keith. And the next session is next week, which will be learning outcome 3.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Take care. Bye.